All right, time to get started on your projects. I think I've heard back from just about everybody. You've set up your groups in most cases, and you're ready to get going. So, where do we start? How do we get going? What do we submit first? I'm still doing the financials first. I probably ought to change that. I used to do those first just because they were so miserable, the templates that I had in the past, that it was difficult to put them together. But it's not that way anymore, and so a lot of this information, or sometimes the information that you need for the financials, actually comes from doing the other stuff. And you realize that, geez, your marketing is going to be $500 a month instead of the $250 that you estimated. Okay, but that said, doing the financials, we all know that it's not very hard to go back and change this because this template's pretty sweet. So, and you guys, for the most part, have used the templates. So let's click on templates here under content. All right, we came to content. We'll click on templates, and we have Excel spreadsheet, and was made back in 2015. Doesn't matter, I guess. Still a very good spreadsheet to use. So let's click on the down arrow, and you guys are going to want to download that. Okay, and we'll get it opened up. Please read the directions. Okay, and you can certainly put in your name, your company name if you want to. The starting month and the starting year are kind of nice up here in the directions, because that'll get the months and stuff correct when we start looking at sales forecasts and those types of things. It can change those a little bit. Okay, oops, go back. It also tells you, where you can enter data, where you should maybe enter data, where you would adjust just at times, okay, not all the time. And it tells you then also that the contents of this thing are locked, okay? And they've done that for a reason, because they don't want just you or me or anybody to get in there haphazardly and change things that kind of might screw things up a little bit. So you're going to find here, and if you read the directions, you should read all the directions because it gives you some other ideas, but if you read the directions down here, it says the cells with formulas in the workbook are locked. If changes are needed, the unlock code is 1234. Okay, so you will come to some places where you may be making some changes, and you will have to enter that unlock code, the 1234. Again, it's not really designed to hide it from anybody. It's just designed so that we don't make unnecessary changes. So here we go. So when we're in the startup, and again, the key thing to remember here is that we do this top part first. The bottom part becomes a little bit easier. All right. In this top part, okay, feel free to, and for some of you this may be the case, especially when you get into like furniture fixtures or equipment. There's at least a couple people that are doing a coffee shop. Yeah, golly, you're going to have all kinds of equipment, right, for a coffee shop. So, not a lot of money necessarily, but you're going to have a lot of stuff. So you may well want to come here, open up another worksheet here, make a list of the stuff that you're going to have. My expectations, in business finance, I told you often that, my expectations there on the background research weren't all that great, but my expectations for the research here get to be a lot more. Okay, I do expect you to research. I do expect you to think through the things that you're going to need for that business, whether it be equipment, furniture fixtures, equipment, whether it be supplies, whether it be inventory, those types of things that you're going to need for this business. And it'd be wonderful if you set them up on a separate spreadsheet. You might want one spreadsheet for, inventory. You might want another spreadsheet for supplies, and you might want another spreadsheet for equipment, whatever the case may be. So feel free to do that. I guess I won't require it, but if I get to the starting point here and I look at something, like equipment, and it just says $5,000, there's no notes, no nothing, you may get a response in the feedback that says, "Oh, what is it?" Okay, so do your research here. Okay, that's the how we're upping our game here a little bit for entrepreneurship versus finance. So you go down this, and a lot of you, many of you, may or may not have real estate, land and buildings. The simplest way often to get into a place is to have a rental. And if that's the case, okay, you may have some leasehold improvements, you may not. If you do have a building, my expectation is that you'll actually do a little research on that. Okay, if you're going to buy something, what's available? If you're doing it in Havre, for example, it's not very difficult to go online and look at the various realtors and find out what might be available. Or if you're driving through town, you can see buildings that are available. Might you have to call the owner or call a realtor? Maybe. See what it's selling for. I break this down, and you need to break this down. The reason we do, break down land and buildings, so you may buy a building on a lot, okay, is that the land itself is not depreciable, but the building is depreciable. Okay, so you may want to have a breakdown like that. You may not be able to get that from somebody, and you may have to make an estimate. Okay, you might have to ask the realtor, well, what would a lot cost? In this area, the whole thing's $200,000. The realtor says, hey, a lot here, a blank lot or a bare lot would cost you $50,000. Okay, so you got $50,000 for the land and $150,000 for the building. Then in that case, leasehold improvements. Let's say you go up to the mall and you lease one of their units. You're gonna have to go in and do some remodeling and whatnot. I don't know if any of you have been to the Wiesla Brewing, but they put a lot of money into that, remodeling it and setting it up so it fits their purposes, and those are on you. Okay, and so you need to try to make some estimates about what those are going to be. And those estimates might include, talking to a contractor a little bit, getting some ideas. And equipment, same thing, like I said, make a good thorough list. Think it through. I'll look at the list, and I might come up with some other things that you might have to go back and include, etc. Okay, furniture and fixture, same thing, right? So equipment, those things. Let's go back to the coffee shop. Your espresso machines, equipment, right? The chairs and the tables where the customers sit, that's furniture and fixtures, right? Okay, so we kind of separate that out a little bit. Vehicles, if you have one. For some of you, that may be your main thing. You're doing a service business, for example, and your vehicle may be your main thing. There again, it's not very hard to do a little research. Tell me what a 2015, Ford cargo van costs, and then also, that's going to cost $15,000, but I'm also going to put in $5,000 worth of stuff into it, improvements, whatever the case may be. Add some equipment or tools and those types of things that would be added and attached to the vehicle. Some of you may have businesses that would include some other stuff, and so you put that there. And again, you got a spot over here for notes. Feel free. I'm going to tell you that there's not many places where you should mess around with the white cells, but this is one. Putting notes here is encouraged, okay, and as is doing other worksheets for some of those things. Okay, pre-opening salaries and wages, and again, if you remember from finance, this is just those amounts you're going to pay people before you open your doors. So you may plan an opening of July 1. Okay, that's when you're going to be open and going. But from May 1 through July 1, you're going to need to hire some people to come in and help you remodel, do those types of things. Maybe a week before you open, you're going to pay your help to come in and get trained. Okay, so that's it. But as of July 1, that's going to go on our operating expenses. Okay, or actually on our payroll report here that will end up on our operating expenses. But this is just the stuff that you'll pay people. For some of you, it may be zero. Again, if you're in that service type of a business, maybe you're not going to have any employees. Okay? Or they don't require any training or whatnot, and you'll get started right on July 1. So it could very well be zero. Prepaid insurance. Do you need to call an insurance agent? Yeah, maybe. This is one of those cases where, I know it's easy to find a lot of things online, and we enjoy that because we can just sit right there and do it. We can shop online and do all that. This is one of those where you might have to actually make the phone call, okay, and call an agent and say, this is what I'm thinking. What am I going to need for insurance? There's basically a couple types of insurance. There's like a comprehensive type of insurance where you would get paid if there's fire insurance, flood insurance, whatever, if your building were burnt or were flooded. Okay, and then there's liability insurance, and all of you are probably going to require at least a liability policy. So if you make a mistake, do something wrong, it's covered. Okay. So probably at the very least. And the reason it says prepaid insurance premiums is that the agent or the company is probably going to require that you pay that maybe at least 6 months in advance and maybe a full year in advance. So inventory. Again, you may want to include a nice list. And so you might put on here, look at sheet 16 or whatever the case is for in your notes, and have a list of the inventory. Don't confuse inventory with supplies. Supplies are down here. Inventory is that stuff that you're going to sell to the customer. Supplies might be things that you would use. Okay, so hand towels in the bathrooms, or towels or rags or those types of things that you might have out. That you might use for yourself, right? Would be supplies. I'd call napkins supplies. Condiments would kind of be supplies because you're providing those to the customers, but you're not really selling those to the customers. Inventory kind of gives you the assumption, you make the assumption that you're going to sell that to customers, so you can figure out what your cost of goods sold is and your gross profit. Legal and accounting fees, those are going to be upfront things as well. Okay, what you might have to pay to set up your LLC or your LLP or your LP or whatever it is. And the accounting fees. Again, these are just upfront ones. If you're going to have some ongoing costs like payroll expenses or those types of things, we'll have those in the operating expenses on perhaps a monthly basis. Rent deposits, if you're renting a place, you might have a deposit. Utility deposits, maybe. Some places have, or if you've had an account, you don't have to pay a utility deposit. Okay. Supplies, think through those things that you might need for supplies. Again, it's all the things that you use in the normal course of the business. Your dishwashing soap, your hand towels, your cleaning solutions, your mops, etc. Okay. Advertising and promotions, and this should again be more of an upfront cost because we're going to do operating expenses here, and what's the first line is advertising. So we don't want to put stuff in here that is going to be monthly. Just the stuff that we're going to spend money on ahead of time. What might that be? Signage, for example. Putting one of those magnetic signs on the side of my car. Having a sign put out in front. Maybe I put the sticker things on the windows, so that it shows me that. Licenses. Some of you will probably be in businesses that require a license. You need to kind of know what that cost is going to be. Other initial startup costs, again, depending on the business. Okay. Working capital. You must show some working capital. Okay. The SBA, not that these would all be SBA types of loans, and of course the SBA is closed down right now, but in any event, the SBA generally likes to see about 6 months worth of operating expenses listed as your working capital. We don't know what our operating expenses are yet. Okay, you could go mess around a little bit over here if you wanted to get some ideas. You might be missing some of these down here, but you could do that and get an idea what 1 month's worth is, and then figure out what 6 months might be. Or you can kind of make a guess. 10 grand. Okay, get my operating expenses done later. I might have to come back and change that. All right, I'm limited to 15 minutes here, and I'm just about up. I'll do a next video, and we'll talk briefly about the sources of funding and how we want to set that up.